When people are loved and heard and valued and respected and know that they have a purpose on the planet, they thrive.
You're listening to the Dare to Be Different podcast, a podcast for people who want to live an extraordinary life. On this week's episode, Joe sits down with licensed professional counselor Michelle Croyle to talk about reframing your mindset. Enjoy.
So welcome to the Dare to Be Different podcast. My name's Joe Altieri. I am here today with a special guest. How are you today, Michelle?
I'm doing fine. Thanks, Joe.
I am so glad that you are here.
I love being here. Your studio is amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So the Dare to Be Different podcast is all about living an exceptional life. And we use 5 words that we think encompass that thought of an exceptional life. And they are adventurous, honest, passionate, healthy, and grateful. And for those of you that don't know, Michelle, you are a mental health expert, I guess is the best way that I would use to describe.
I'm a licensed professional counselor.
Licensed professional counselor.
And a life coach.
And a life coach.
Yeah.
And so you help people essentially overcome some things that they might have going on in their minds that limit what type of exceptional life they can have.
Yeah,
is that a good way of describing?
Yeah, we get in our own worst way. You know, we get in the way in the worst ways. And so I help people navigate and get around it and just look at life differently. Often clients will say things like, oh, I never thought of it that way. And it's really a matter, the word I love to use all the time is reframe. Mm-hmm. So if we can reframe into a more helpful mindset, you can get some momentum going.
Well, that's fantastic. And, we've, Alicia and I, do the podcast together a lot of times. And she's been very open about her struggles with, her dad passing and the therapist that she uses. And it has been amazing just having that outside perspective, giving some strategies for overcoming the grief that she's going through and things like that.
That's right. Yeah.
I would love to know more about what you do and how, just as a typical person, that just wants to have something, live a little bit better, have a little bit better self-talk, whatever those things are.
Yeah.
So
self-talk.
Give me a little glimpse into your world.
Okay. So basically, no matter who comes through the door, my goal is to hear their heart rather than their mind or their circumstances. I of course listen to their mind and their thoughts and their circumstances and what they feel they need. But what I'm really, I think, gifted at is listening to the heart underneath it all and pinpointing, okay, this is really the crux of it. It's coming out in this thought or this behavior, this thing that's getting in their way. That's not really it. We have to meet that underlying need. And if we can figure out how to meet that underlying need, their thoughts are going to be able to be different because they're going to realize that they're able to take steps that kind of, I'm not talking prescription medication,
sure,
but kind of medicate what's actually going on. It's oftentimes more of things that have happened to them, hurts that they've had, things that they've been told about themselves that aren't true. And so the mindset and self-talk is kind of overcoming all of that crap that's been thrown at you in life,
right?
And clearing it out and going, is that really true, or did I just accept it as true?
Wow, that's really. You said a lot there.
I know, and I realized that I'm thinking in my head, going, that's a lot. Let me pull it back. Yeah. So go for it.
No, well, and so let's just talk about the negative self-talk because that's. I think that a lot of people, that is the biggest obstacle in their life to being happy. To having true joy.
Yes.
It's not necessarily outside circumstances. It's all of the things that rattle around in our brain. And this is very true for me as well.
Yeah. We all have.
I'm my own worst critic by far.
Yeah. And so it's like a strength and a weakness, right? Mm-hmm. People who want to dare to be different things, you know, they have a desire and they have drive oftentimes, but they sometimes kind of derail themselves because of that negative self-talk. And so what we want to do is help them to go, wait a minute, let's actually take this one thought. If you can identify the negative thought that you're having or the thing that keeps plaguing you, and you can really kind of isolate it and pull it out. That's like the one simple thing you can do is say, okay, you know what? Something has been bothering me. What actually is this? Something's been like replaying in my mind negatively. What is this that is happening? And if you could put it into one or two statements and then question, is that true? Or is that like an assumption? There are things called cognitive distortions. And that helps play into these bad self-talk things.
Right.
So, for instance, I feel something, so it must be true. So I feel like a failure. It must be true. Well, it could be you. And if you're having negative self-talk and we look at the things you've achieved in life, you have a successful family, you have this wonderful company, you have this podcast, you're not a failure. But right, if that's still playing in your mind, then if we isolate it and say, I am a failure, that's not completely accurate. We want to say, I feel like I'm failing, but I have evidence to say that I am, someone who perseveres, someone who has integrity, someone who has, a desire to help other people. When you can reframe it, you gain that power, but you have to isolate it first.
That is so. Nicholas, you should go get the couch out of my office, and I'll just put it down here. I'll lay down, and we could just record, Michelle, helping me out, because I think that by itself was, it was so profound. It really, really was. I understand that there's a lot that goes on, but that's a lot of what you do is try to isolate those things.
What
right?
I try to do is take all this stuff that's overwhelming and complicated, and it is, but it really can be narrowed down to basic human needs. Things like, am I safe? Am I heard? Am I respected? Am I valued? Am I significant? Those are the things that people really want to know and they really want to resonate with. When people are loved and heard and valued and respected and know that they have a purpose on the planet, they thrive. But it's in that safe environment. The problem is, right, that we can be both our worst critic and our best friend internally.
Right.
And so it's like all those things have to be there support-wise outside. But inside, how can you be kinder to yourself? You have to have self-compassion. And the word that comes up with clients so much for me, especially women, not excluding men, but especially for women, is grace. I'm like, have grace with yourself. Why are you being so hard on yourself? Would you talk like that to your best friend? If someone came to you with the same problem, would you treat them the way that, you're doing inside your head? Would you please have grace with yourself? And, I preaching to myself too, because I'm my worst critic too.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I find myself in this situation where like I say something dumb, right? We all do it. We all say something. And then 3 days later, I'm still obsessed with that. I'm like, I cannot believe I said that stupid thing. And the people that you said it to they've never had a second thought to it. But I'm beating myself up over a situation that no one else in the world cares about.
Yeah. And so, okay, so do you want to do a little therapy just
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So go with that.
Okay.
Okay. So I want you to tell me, I said something stupid, right? And what is the self-talk that goes with I said something stupid? So try to look at your underlying emotion or feeling when you say that to yourself. What's underlying? What's in there?
Some probably insecurity is probably the big thing for me personally. Even though to your point, there's a lot of great things going on, I'm still human.
Yeah.
Right. And I still have and it seems like the more successful the outside looks, the more I'm going, do I actually, am I worthy of this? Am I actually doing the right things?
Yeah.
So then when something comes out where I'm like, see, you are an idiot. See what you just
said?
It. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and that's that. So what you're doing is you're like, my insecurities, because I'm human, I'm looking for information that reinforces that insecurity. In reality, you have all this other information over here that's reinforcing the truth. And so it's looking at it, again, that reframe word. We want to look at, are you balancing it with, kind of an intentional design? So, you want to intentionally go, okay, I am feeling, right, like I'm, insecure and I'm a failure. That's okay because I'm human, and that's also the weakness that makes me stronger. It drives me to want to do well, but I'm not perfect. There's only one who's perfect. And I tell people, I'm like, okay, there's one who's perfect. It's Jesus. You're not him. So we're already past that. Just get over perfect, right? You do not have to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. Like, coming in here today for the podcast, I spilled my sweet tea from McDonald's on the way over, and I'm going, I know years ago I would have been like, oh crap, I'm going to end up with this stain on my shirt or something. And I thought, you know what, if I end up with a stain on my shirt, I'm going to go in and I'm going to tell Joe, hey, I was a klutz and this happened. It's kind of, you can choose what to make those big deals out of, and you can choose to tell yourself a different narrative. That's what we call it in therapy, is a different narrative, a different story, because we're constantly telling ourselves self-talk stories.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're continually telling yourself that, I said something stupid for days, right? You wouldn't do, you have grown kids. Would you do that to them? Like, oh, hey, you said a misstep, but something didn't go out right. Even me saying that, right? You said a misstep. How do you say a misstep? You do a misstep, right? Now, I'm not going to beat myself up over that. I'm going to go, okay, my thoughts were going faster than my mouth, and my mouth caught up, and I'm human, and that's okay. So, how would I talk to my child? How would I talk to my spouse? How would I, talk to somebody that I'm trying to encourage? And then do that to yourself intentionally, to that thing that you've isolated that's been going through your mind. So it might sound something like, where you say, oh man, I can't believe I said that. That just proves I'm insecure and stupid. You know what? I did say that, and that doesn't change that I'm valuable. That doesn't change that I know what I'm doing a lot of the time. It doesn't change that I don't know what I'm doing some of the time either. I mean, it's just, that's okay.
Right.
And when you can kind of do that, they call it in therapy, again, radical acceptance. You just go, yeah, okay. Now what? So what now what? Let's move on, and I think we just have to be more flexible in our thinking.
So I've been listening to a lot of people, and they talk about humans have a negativity bias.
Yes.
And is that something? And it seems like with social media, with all those things, that the negativity bias is actually growing and becoming more a part of our lives. And so the negativity bias, if I understand it correctly, is that when we look at the world, our initial inclination is to go to the things that could go wrong, or the things that are wrong, or why this won't do this, and those types of things.
Yeah.
Is that something that you see a lot?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, I do see it a lot, especially with people who are dealing with depression. But it's kind of, I think where it comes from, and this is just my perspective.
Sure.
I have a trauma training background. Recently, that's been really an area that I'm specializing in. And I really kind of think that it's an adaptive learning thing, right? If we can look for the threats that are going to come, well, let me go back. We are programmed just naturally to survive, right? Because if we're not alive, we don't have any experience, right? So from the earliest moments, survival is the primary objective of our bodies, okay? So anything that presents a threat to that is going to be something that we take in as information, whether it's on a subconscious level or a rational level, and we're going to go, I want to avoid that pain. I want to never be hurt over here. I never want to, have to deal with that again. I will never be blindsided again. When you start to have always and never in there, it can often be a protective mechanism trying to keep you to survive. That's fine. Like if there's a wild bear attacking you, you're like, okay, I'm never going into the woods again without a shotgun or mace or
I'm not
going
to go into a dark cave
exactly.
again.
Yeah, or the subway alone at 2 a.m. in New York City, without something to protect myself. That makes sense. But when your brain then takes that survival mechanism and it tries to do it on things that are not life or death matters, it gets in the way. So you might try, I don't know the situation that led you to feel, oh gosh, maybe it's an insecurity or a failure, but maybe, and just hypothetically, maybe it's something like a coach sometimes singled someone out and was like in front of everybody and was like, hey, can't you ever do anything right? And that embarrassed them. So now they're like, I'm never going to say or do anything that could embarrass me again, because it felt life-threatening. It
Right.
felt like a separation from a relationship. It felt like, something that was really insurmountable. And so they don't want that to ever happen again. So it kind of comes from a good spot. It comes from trying to keep yourself safe and trying to keep yourself in a state of being able to survive emotionally as well. But they're two separate systems. Survival, even if you survive, that doesn't mean that emotionally you're healthy. And so that's what we try to protect. That's where the negativity bias comes from, is, I think, anyhow, that's just my hunch, that we're looking at, how can I make sure that I am as safe as possible going forward for what I'm trying to do?
Yeah. So us as Americans typically don't have life or death situations. It's just,
Right.
we live in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. Like the odds of me
Yeah.
coming into a life and death situation are very, very small.
Exactly.
But my body still wants to do that. We're programmed for it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
therefore, I have to do something with that. And now it becomes an anxiety based off of what you say or things like that.
Yeah. And in your mind, right, if you don't have these major threats, because I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I have, like when there's a real life or death threat, I have, I had high blood pressure in pregnancy. And so with our first, there was a question as to him being able to survive if I had a seizure. Okay, so it's called preeclampsia. And hate that. But anyhow, so in that real life or death moment, everything became clear for me. When the doctor said, we have to make sure that this swelling goes down or you could seize and the baby could die, I'm going, okay, I don't care about who said what over here. I don't care about anything else. All I care about is that my baby lives. I don't care if I go. I just want to make sure that, like, whatever the next step is, all of our priorities were in line. This is what we're doing. Baby is surviving.
Right.
That is it. And he's here. And, and that's God's grace. But that was also like clarity that this was a life or death issue for me and my child. And the rest doesn't matter. So when we're in Pittsburgh, right, and we're not in those life or death situations, what feels like life or death to us? Oh, how do other people think about us?
Yeah.
Or, how's this going to come across? Is this going to come across? So, I mean, it's still that for survival, but in the absence of actual life or death situations, we can construct it. We're pretty creative people.
That's amazing. So again, I'm the way that my mind's going, and so suddenly, because somebody is so protected because they're in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, who posts something about them on Instagram becomes the biggest thing in the world, and it's a huge thing.
That's their big threat.
Yeah. Or who's going to be the next president? All of those things where, to your point, if you're in a real life or death situation, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. You don't care about that. All you are is survival. Yeah.
And I've had a chance to do a lot of traveling, and I told the story before, but I was down in the Dominican Republic, and which is part of the island that Haiti is on, and terrible poverty, terrible poverty. And people are really in situations where it's life. Am I going to eat today or not eat today? And they have a tremendous amount of joy, and even in the midst of that poverty, even in the midst of those life or death situations. And again, my personal feeling is that because of that, because they are in situations that are truly meaningful, everything else disappears, and they're just about that day. And how, their happiness is true happiness, is not fake, because I got 30,000 likes on Instagram or whatever. Yeah. Their pain is real pain. So I don't know. Do you have any?
They don't have the luxury.
Yes.
Of idle mind wandering from social media.
Wow.
Like, it's just not in there, because when you're under threat, you cannot kind of look at this extra stuff.
Right.
You have to be focused. And so, I often say to myself, not to other people, there are things I often say to other people, but the thing that I tell myself is, like, if I'm obsessing about something too much, I am probably not busy enough doing the right stuff.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because like if I have time to be like, oh my gosh, I'm getting nervous about coming to Joe's podcast, then like and I wasn't, right? Because I'm like, okay, Joe's awesome, and this is going to be fun, and it's a great adventure, and I like hearing my voice in the mic, and so I reframed it to go like, this is just fun,
Right.
Like if I were 5 years old, I would be like, oh, how cool can I play with this mic? Like most of us do, if
Right.
you ever see a kid around a microphone, they're like, oh my gosh. Well, over time, that type of thing gets stripped away from us, that joy and that purity. Because we live in a fallen world where everything is hard a lot of the
Sure,
time,
yep.
And I shouldn't say everything, it's not, but I mean, that is that kind of negativity bias where you go, okay, am I really, this world can seem scary. And so when you can, again, pull back and go, am I, what is really happening here? Oh, I'm actually just kind of obsessing in my own thoughts right now. Let's go help somebody else. Let's get out of it by being more productive. Let's go do that. So, before I came in, I did therapy notes. I checked my, to-do list thoughts and everything. I was like, I'm going to intentionally act upon this, because if I just sat around waiting to come in, I'd be like, okay, I'm going into a podcast. What am I going to say? Is it going to be stupid? And I just kind of accepted the fact that I may say something stupid. I may say something good. I'm just going to go in there with a heart to serve and to connect with Joe and give him whatever information he wants me to give him. And we're going to be okay. And I'm going to leave here today, and I'm probably going to think that was a fun experience.
Sure.
And then move on, probably post it on my social media, but if people like it or they don't, that doesn't change anything. It's just kind of, okay. And it's that self-talk, it's that adaptive thinking, but you have to practice it over time.
Right. So probably one of the worst experience, and this is a crazy worst experience. One of the worst experiences of my life was the hour before walking down the hallway of Shark Tank, because you're in your trailer,
Yeah.
and you have nothing else to do other than obsess about what is coming, and
Yep.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But that's exactly it. I didn't have anything that could keep my mind off of what was
And that was your threat.
inevitable.
Yeah. That was your threat at the moment. You were like
Yep.
going down death row at the,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So your system was like, oh, we can't pay attention to these things. We got to pay attention to what's going to happen.
Right.
You're trying to protect yourself.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. So one of the things, as we're trying to express how important having an exceptional life is to our listeners and our friends and family and stuff like that, one of the things that seems to get in the way is this anxiety about actually stepping out and doing something different. I think that one of the defense mechanisms that we have as people is, if we just do what everybody else does, we'll be safe.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to stand out. We're not putting ourselves under scrutiny. We're not.
It's just not as much fun.
And it's definitely not as much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, I know that there are people listening to this right now. They're like, there's something great that I want to do. It's in their minds. They want to step out. They want to do something. What type of advice could you give them as they're, again, battling that self-talk, of, I want to start a business, or I want to do this for this charity, or I want to go out and run a 5K, and I'm 80 pounds overweight, and there's no possible, my family's going to think I'm an idiot to say that's one of my goals. What sort of advice can you give to them?
So, I don't, do we have time for a little story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
So for me, right, I remember like in high school, I had a desire to help people.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that. And I remember saying to, my dad said, what do you want to do with your life? Like my senior year. And I'm like, I want to help people. And he was like, yeah, every good Christian kid says they want to help people. And I really meant it like as a profession.
Right.
He thought I was just like, yeah, well, that's what I want to do. And that's nice. And I did. And I went to school to start it for behavioral science, which is like psychology, and I realized this isn't working for me right now. So I went into communications. Okay. Anyhow, that was a long time ago. So we're talking, I don't know, 89. So that's like, a long time ago. And so from that though, right, I knew that I wanted to help people. I knew that family was always a value of mine. It was always really a priority and important to me. And I knew that I wanted other people to be able to have healthy, happy families.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want people to emotionally hurt. Okay. So those were like my core things that I knew I was on the planet to do. Okay. Now, I remember after my kids were born, going, I went to school for all of this. I didn't do the behavioral science. I ended up making communications my major. And so It's like, I like writing because of communications. I'll write about family. And then I learned you have to have a platform so that people will want to read what you wrote, like what gives me credibility. And I thought, well, because I know that I love family and I know this is how I believe and this is what I should do. Shoot, like that, like if I want to ever have a book or I ever want to be known, like this isn't enough. Like I need another skill and another step. Okay, so the reason I'm telling you all this is not to go on a long-winded story, but to say that I am now here sitting talking with you in the process of writing books, which I'm like need to intentionally make more time for. But I didn't get here quickly. I got here over the last 22 years. It took me 13 years to get my counseling license because my priority was my family, ironically, right? Oh, family's important to me. That's where I homeschooled. That's where I spent my time. That's where, and then they got older and they needed me not as much presently, but they needed my finances and my car and, you know, all that.
Sure.
So I said, okay, this is the time to focus on career, right? But all of it was that thread. So the thread being, don't look at it as if, gosh, I want to run that 5K, but I'm 80 pounds overweight. Like you're doing that 5K today. It could be a 20-year process for that 5K. I hope not. That's a long time for a 5K. But, you know, it can be a big process. So what you want to do is know that end in mind and do the first step. So the first step for me was taking a master's degree statistics class, and I stink at math, right? I failed my first test, even though I thought I was prepared. And I failed. Now what? And my husband and I went out to dinner. And I said, I don't want to waste graduate school money if I'm going to fail out. And then I said, no, I know I'm supposed to do this. So I went ahead and said, all right, it's only this amount for one class. If I fail out, I just won't. I'm just going to do my best. And I got a C. Statistics is not going to ever be my area. And I'm not a failure because of that. I'm not a math person. That's okay. You know, other people are math people, and I'm grateful for that. But moving on to the next thing was, okay, I passed the statistics class. Okay, I went into my first counseling class. Did real well in that. Did another counseling class. And I did this painstakingly. Like each semester, only 1 or 2 courses. What should have been a 2-year program was a 4-year program.
Right.
And then my licensure, it's 3,000 hours after you graduate. It took me 10 years because I didn't start the clock on the 3,000 hours because I didn't want to take time away from the family. So that 5K, it's that type of thing. It's, you know, okay, I might tell them I want to do a 5K, or maybe I don't tell them. Maybe I just know for myself. Maybe I just tell them, hey, I'm going out for a walk for 5 minutes this morning.
Right.
Okay. Hey, could you get me more salad when you go to the store? I mean, you know, whatever that is, break it down into those small intentional things. Do that well. Focus intentionally on that one thing that you can do well. Then take the next step. Anybody that looks like an overnight success, like I've heard your story, you know, you were in the garage for years working on the flex screen. You didn't just go, oh, hey, here's the screen. Let me go on Shark Tank. It just doesn't happen. So people have unrealistic expectations. They think they can have it all now or they can't have it ever. All or nothing thinking is another one of those self-talk distortions.
Right.
It's not true. You can have a lot, but you have to not let yourself be derailed. You know, you have to just know, okay, if I do this right action, then the next step is the next right action. And before you know it, you look back and you go, hey, that actually led somewhere.
Well, and one of the things that we talk about a lot is even if you have that 5K as the goal or whatever thing, whatever exceptional thing that you want to do, the journey along the way is life.
Yeah.
And so even if you never get to that 5K, at least you're moving in a direction and you're experiencing life.
Yeah. It's more fun than sitting on the couch, you know, regretting what you haven't done.
Right.
Yeah.
Netflix is the enemy of
I know, but it's also good too, right? So
downtime. I'm not talking about downtime.
Yeah. See
Yes.
that, and that's it. That's it. I wasn't, suggesting that you were, but that's it, right? People could hear you say that, and then they go, oh, I can never do Netflix. That's that flexible thinking again. It's not never. It's like Joe said, in downtime, right? It's intentional. Intentional is really a key word.
Wow. Well, I have to tell you, I have gotten so much out of this stuff. We need to do this again.
I'd love to.
yeah.
I'm sorry if it was too much. I get passionate.
It's
So-
fantastic.
Well, there's your word. You're one of the 5 words.
yes,
I get passionate and I babble on.
And it's so great to be around passionate people. I know, and I want to have our listeners, be able to get some more information about you. So I want to talk about that in a minute. But you and your husband are passionate about people living healthy lives.
Yeah.
Mental health, spiritual health. Families that get repaired through the work that you do with them.
Yeah.
And I love being around passionate people. It's it's so important.
Yeah, it is.
You have to have something that is
Driving you.
that drives you.
Yeah.
And if my children have something that they're passionate, whatever that thing is, I don't care what it is. If they have something that they're passionate, and our listeners, they have something that they're passionate about and they can live for.
Yeah.
That is a success. That is a successful life, as far as I'm concerned.
That's absolutely. Yeah, because you're never going to regret going after who you are.
Right.
Who you're made to be is like the gift to the planet. So, playing like reservedly and thinking you can't do it is actually kind of selfish. And that's what helped me.
That's good.
That's what helped me get out of my shell. Because I remember I had a job early on where I was a director of public relations. So I had to go speak at different places and try to, and I would like not be able to sleep the night before, or my voice would shake or whatever. And so I'm like, that job's not for me. And so several years later, I got asked to speak, and I was like, yeah, great. I'm stuck with this again. My voice might shake. And I realized, wait a minute, if I've been asked to speak, there's something that I'm supposed to talk about. I am being selfish to only focus on, gosh, my voice might shake, rather than how can I help somebody else? And when I tied that into my core purpose, my core being of I'm here on the planet to help people and help them not be hurt and, to heal. When I tied it into my core purpose, that went away because it wasn't self-focused, it was others-focused, and it tied into who I'm made to be, and so the nervousness went away. It didn't go away overnight. My voice shook a lot more. Every now and then, I'm sure it could, but I mean, like I said, I didn't lose sleep last night about this. I was like, this could be fun, but it took steps to get here, and it took the focus off of me and my insecurity to where it really should be, which is, hey, I just want to go and, whatever Joe wants to talk about, I want to give him a good podcast, and whoever's listening, I hope something helps them, because, we all get information from somewhere, and a lot of people have helped me by having reframe mindsets. So, if I can help somebody else, cool.
Well, I have to tell you, that point right there changed something in me, just because I do think that a lot of times when we think about having an exceptional life, we think that is selfish.
Yeah.
That I want to do this for me. But the fact of the matter is, if you are not allowing the world to take part in your exceptionalness, then you're actually robbing the rest of us of something great.
Exactly.
That is amazing. That is so great.
Yeah, and so who are we to stand in the way of who we've been made to be?
Wow.
Because that's just selfish, and then everybody's miserable. I'd rather everybody, just we all get along, and it's not a competition. It's like, they have that saying of, I forget, like a rising tide lifts all ships or something like that.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. And so it's just, it's like, it's not a competition. Like, if I can help you, you can help me, they can help each other. And it's not, I don't do it for help, or you don't do it for, to get that help back. It's just, hey, we're just all in this life together. None of us gets out of life. We're just like, let's just do something special with it. We're all unique, and it can be fun.
That's awesome. Well, you have been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We will definitely have to do this again.
I'd love that.
Tell all of our listeners where they can find you and find more information.
Okay, so if they want to get a hold of me, it's Michelle at Abundant with a T. Abundant Freedom Counseling. I wouldn't say life. Abundant Life is like one of my passions there. Abundant Freedom Counseling is my business. So it's Michelle at abundantfreedomcounseling.com.
And is that your website?
That's my website. Yeah, but the, Abundant Freedom Counseling is my website, and then Michelle @ is the email address, and then there's also a Gmail address for Marriage Guy and Gal, which is marriageguy&gal@gmail.com.
Marriage Guy and Gal. So you do again, just so that everybody understands, you guys do some marriage counseling.
We do marriage counseling, marriage coaching, pre-marriage prep, and marriage classes,
and then also
and seminars.
You're busy, but then you also do individual counseling as well and coaching.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Exactly. Like clinical professional counseling as well as life coaching.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing what you're passionate about and
you're
sharing,
welcome.
Giving us some strategies to be healthier.
Yeah.
And wow, I wish you guys the best. And
Thank
if
you.
there's,
Thanks.
I hope that everybody reaches out to you, because I am convinced that mental health is one of the things that will help us live an exceptional life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you got something great out of what Michelle was saying, and I also hope that you strive to live an exceptional life, because guess what? An ordinary one will always be waiting for you. So, have a great week. We love you, and we'll see you next week.